Thank you for the very flattering intro. And thank you AFI, thank you everybody for being here. Thank you Ifla, Jasmine, and the entire team who's helping us out with promoting Newton in LA. I hope you guys like it, and we'll do a Q&A later where we can discuss the film in detail. Thank you.
Welcome back, the director of Newton, Amit Masurkar. And we also have with us lead actress Anjali Patil. Get your questions ready because we'll turn it over to the audience in just a few moments, but I'll start things off, and we always start things off at the beginning. Amit, if you want to tell us a little bit about what inspired you to write this story and to make it.
Yeah, I've always been interested in politics, and I wanted to make a political film. And we all know it's all over the world. There's a big gap between the democracy that is in practice and the principles of democracy. So I wanted to explore this gap. And in India, we always told that India is the world's largest democracy, and elections are such a big part of our, we face the brunt of the politicians that we elect every day. So it was important for me to show a film on the day of the election, on the one day when people feel powerful, they feel that they have the right to elect or defeat somebody that they don't want. So with this was my main inspiration. I wanted to set it on the day of the election. And I had also written another script which never got made, which was about a politician and his, there are a lot of political dynasties, so it was about one such dynasty. And during that time, I had seen a lot of videos of election voting, and I've personally gone and voted, so I was always curious about this whole process. So.
And I'm curious as to what point, when you were creating the story, you chose the location of this Gandhi village, and how you made it a reality to be able to shoot there.
See, this conflict has been, it's there for the last sorry. So this is a conflict which we all know about in India, but it's rarely, it's not the page one, and it's a very serious conflict that's happening, it's in there for the last 35 years. And this Gondi, actually, Gondwana land, which we all know from Laurasia and Gondwana land from prehistory. So that Gondwana land is named after the Gondi people, because they are the original inhabitants of that area. And unfortunately, they are completely disenfranchised. Mining companies and government are together, and they displace these people without really caring about their basic rights. So I wanted to tell that story.
And I believe the actors you see in the film are the actual villagers that live in this area. What was it like? I believe it was their first time acting as well. What was that process like?
Not just the voters, but even the police personnel and everybody except for 6 or 7 actors. Everyone else was a first timer. So we were just maybe 7 people from Bombay, actors from the trained actors from the guild, but the rest of them were all first-time actors. So.
Anjali, I wanted to ask you, as you were tasked with kind of becoming one of the locals, what was the learning process for you, both in speaking the language and in acting with these first-time actors?
I think the language has been always an area of interest for me, the sound of it. And I remember with the first-time actors or the non-actors, the best part about them is they're not performing, they're just being there. And we as trained actors or with the education we receive as an artist, as in drama schools or film schools, it's always difficult to unlearn the techniques and the methods and whatever visual references we have seen about a good performance. So I think that unlearning was one of the biggest challenge for me, and just being there with them as they were just being themselves in front of the camera, and just being honest. We are we all are like scared people. We kind of live in a civilization, but we are so scared, and we forget that the basic thing is just being honest and being in the moment. So I think that's something I learned.
I want to make sure the audience has a chance to ask some things, so if you have a question, please raise your hand. Yeah, right here.
My question is for Amit. So when you were writing the story, so the principles of Newton and the principle of politics, so did Newton come into the story after you started writing, or was it at the back of your mind when you wanted to make it political movie?
See, Newton is
sorry, just to make sure everybody heard the question, I want to repeat it into the mic. The question is about the principles of Isaac Newton and when that came into the story for you.
Yeah, see, I needed a quirk because this character is quirky. You know, he's somebody. I mean, he's a rare character. Somebody he's almost like Don Quixote. You know, he's got these ideals. So I needed a very unique name for him. I couldn't have given him a regular name, and the name Newton, because Isaac Newton was also somebody who was obsessed with purity, like Newton is. At the same time, he was trying to find order in chaos. And I felt that the name suited this character, and you know, these allegories of with Newton, you know, for example, the 3 acts are based on the 3 laws of motion, inertia, momentum, and an equal and opposite reaction. These things came later, you know, they were not, and I was not trying to force anything in, and then we put little things like the apple, you know, these were like just fun things, but we didn't want to overdo it. So also Newton, gravity, earth, pull, you know, these were things that came to us later, but it wasn't like we were trying to force fit Newton into the film.
It was very well balanced. Thank you.
Do you have more questions? There? Right here.
Two things. It's very pretty, so I want to know what you shot with. And B, the military officer you can't say he's corrupt. He has a maturity about him. So I want to know the depth of that character, of how you molded him, and what does he mean when you created him.
So part 1 is what did you shoot with? Part 2 is regarding the character of the military officer and the depth of that character. What did that mean to you?
We shot it on Arri Alexa XT with Cook anamorphic lenses. That was the only indulgence we could afford because we've not used any lights. We were shooting in the jungle with no lights. So we had to shoot at the right time of the day. So my DOP had to, like, literally, you know, he had to know exactly at what time the light is where. And it was raining, unfortunately. You don't see the rain here. So our schedules went haywire. And about the military character, he's a police officer, and they are pawns. You know, they're not evil. They're people from low-income families who are forced to do. I mean, this is their job. So the real villains are mining corporations and people in positions of actual power. These guys are just regular. I met during the course of my research. We went into the jungles. We met a lot of people. So we met people from the police, and I could see that they knew that they were doing something wrong, and that's the saddest part because they are aware of what they are doing, you know. And any person, if you give that person a gun, that person is eventually going to use it in a wrong way. And there are a lot of they've used it in a wrong way, and people suffer from that guilt. They have post-traumatic stress. So these things were important. So I didn't want to villainize that character because it's easy to blame it on that person and his army, but these people are actually also victims in a way. So which is why it was important to make their opinion also balanced. Or back here.
By the way, fantastic and great choice.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'm curious with the 5 or the 7 that you had with professional actors, how you talked about or arranged that sort of deadpan tone. I mean, I was thinking of like early Olmi films. I remember saw Olmi in the beginning, a young person hapless in a larger sort of corrupt society finding his way, and then it went into a complete arc where you were pretty fair to all the characters, as you just explained. So I'm curious how you got that consistent tone of kind of deadpan, wry satire against its background.
So the question is kind of what were the discussions with the professional actors as to how to establish the tone of the film?
Yeah, so it was pretty much there in the writing. My writing partner, Mayank Tiwari, and me, we worked on it for a long time, and It was backed by solid research, so we didn't have to do any improvisations on the set. It was all there. So the actors, like she mentioned, they just had to be honest to what was written and not try to bring in anything extra because it was not needed. And if somebody did that and we liked it, we put it. So there weren't any workshops. We didn't do any workshops with anybody. There was absolutely no, most of my discussions were in the night with my writer and DOP. We would be talking all night about whether we are on the right path. And for me, it was not about performances or about the way it was looking. It was purely about the politics. And I was very aware of what I was setting out to do, or the politics of representation and the politics of being an outsider, going into the jungle and shooting. And so my gaze had to be right. I had to have my heart in the right place. So I was constantly aware of that and making myself and my team aware of it. So there was actually very little work that we did. They were all trained actors, you know. Anjali, all of them are from the National School of Drama. Raj is from FTI. These are like the best acting schools in India. And the rest of the people, they were playing themselves. So they just had to be honest. And we had a very good casting director who found us, like he must have auditioned at least 2,000 people to, for every part, like including those government officers. They're real voting officers in the voting scene. So we had people playing themselves. Like Raj's mother is the casting director's mother. We were not finding anyone and she was in the next town. So, so we didn't have to, nobody had to act. So that was a good thing about it.
Right here.
I have a question. When the movie was being shot, or even after the movie actually released, did you personally experience any pressure from the Maoists or Naxalites in India?
So the question is, while the movie was being shot or after release, did you feel any pressure from the Maoist element in India?
See, a lot of what we know about Maoists in the media is created by the media because they want to create a sense of fear so that information doesn't come out freely, so that people like you and me, if we go there, we are afraid to go there thinking it's a dangerous area. So a lot of it is not true. So when we did our research, we went to the actual so-called liberated zone and we were there and we interviewed a lot of surrendered Nakshals, we interviewed police personnel, we interviewed people who lived there, lawyers, human rights activists, academics. So what we realized is that a lot of it is not true, and we didn't get any pressure from anybody when we were shooting there. The government didn't bother us because they thought of us as a Bollywood crew, so nobody takes Bollywood seriously. So they thought we were like, okay, go shoot. And the Maoists were, we didn't have any protection when we were shooting it, just the crew, because it was dangerous to have police on the set, because then we would be targets. So the Maoists were happy because the film is talking about the problem, and I'm guessing, I don't know any Maoists, but nobody bothered us. In fact, I was actually worried that we would have a backlash from the ultra left, but they were with us. Except for the far right, everybody else was in favor of the film. So
We have time for just one more, so let's make it. I'm going to go back here.
First of all, congratulations.
Thank you.
So you can't always choose who's in the movie theater watching the movie, but you have, I'm guessing, an ideal audience in mind. Who would be that ideal audience? Who would you want to be in the theater watching this movie?
So the question is, who would your ideal audience for this film be?
I think this is like, I actually, the film is actually, I personally don't think it's an art house film, because I wanted it to reach out to people. And this is the audience, not just an Indian audience, but a world audience. And we've been to around 60 festivals and we've got similar receptions everywhere. And the best part is that we also screened it in Kondagaon. We were there for a week, and all the actors, they managed to watch it on the big screen. We had a little premiere there, and it ran very well in places where an art house, the Indian art house scenario is very limited. You release it in multiplexes in the cities, but this film got released in a lot of small towns. We were in the theaters for 4 weeks. So it was a commercial success, and by commercial success, I mean the money doesn't come to me, but the commercial, by commercial success means that people get to watch it. So for me, that was the most interesting part, because the film also raises a lot of questions. So people go back, they Google about the problem, it sensitizes them. So that was my motivation. So I'm happy as long as the audience sits and enjoys the film.
And just as a means of, yes. Here, just as a means of wrap up, in the run-up to your campaign to shortlist for the Oscars, it's going to have somewhat of a U.S. release in theaters, correct?
Yeah, we are planning to do a theater release in the US in January, a limited one. But we're coming on Amazon Prime, and it'll release in the US after the theatrical, but it's releasing on Amazon Prime by November end all over the world.
So tell your friends, please. Thank you, Amit and Anjali, for joining us. Thank you all for coming. Please do give your audience word ballots to a volunteer on the way out, and please clear the theater.